welcome back to Triple K News. This is the only news station you need to stay informed about relevant matters. So today, our important topic of discussion is these two genius scientists on Earth who have decided to visit the planet Jupiter and one of its moons, Titan, and conduct their research there. They have taken two organisms and inserted them in one terrestrial ecosystem and one aquatic ecosystem. So today, they're going to tell us about how those organisms affected the biotic and abiotic factors of the environment, how they were introduced and what that did to the environment, two limiting factors on their population's growth, their new names by binomial nomenclature, how they evolved, and how they speciate. Here they are. And these mugshots will help you identify them and will give them more credibility when they speak on their research. Hi, welcome back to Triple K News, your one and only source for all the information you may ever need. So today, we have a very special guest on our show. We've managed to get the coveted Dr. Arman into our show. He was the one who conducted the research that we spoke of yesterday about going to the planet Titan and taking two creatures with him. So, Dr. Arman, how was the trip back?
Well, it was good. Having Earth food was kind of a doozy.
Oh yeah, classic Dr. Arman. So, can you please describe your research, Dr. Arman?
So the idea was to have an amphibious creature put into either a single terrestrial ecosystem or aquatic ecosystem.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What were your goals?
The goal of this project is that we want to see the effects that a otherwise known hybrid creature would have in an ecosystem with only either aquatic or terrestrial types.
What was your initial hypothesis before you conducted this research?
We didn't expect much of a change because they're already so flexible and able to live.
Welcome back from a break, Dr. Arman. I hope you enjoyed those earth food, those crackers or something else.
I did.
Okay, so now I'm gonna ask you some more technical questions about your research.
Yeah.
So what were the abiotic and biotic factors in the environment before the organism was introduced?
Good question. There's a lot of abiotic factors that you have to take into account before you bring an animal to another planet. The chemical environment that frogs usually live in on Earth would be between 6.5 pH on the pH scale and 4. So they do like more acidic waters, of course. So you have to take that into account as we go into Titan with more pure water, which is more basic. The temperature of Titan was astronomically cold. It's really far away from the sun and it's freezing. So luckily enough, frogs are able to live in freezing temperatures, and that's why we chose them to come on the expedition with us. Water pressure was something that we did have to take into account, mainly because frogs didn't normally live in only water environments. They have lungs just like humans, and they have to breathe. So they did have to adapt towards changing their muscular physique.
I see, that's interesting. But how did the abiotic and biotic factors get impacted by the frogs? How were they changed by the introduction of the species?
I wouldn't say that the abiotic factors and biotic factors changed because of the frogs. I would say the frogs changed because of the abiotic factors, because they are a much bigger force than the frogs are, of course. So for the chemical environment, the pH level of the water was around 7.6 on Titan. And so this posed a problem for the frogs because, of course, they lived in more acidic waters. So they had to gain a type of gill of some sort so they can live both underwater and so they can take in more H+, more oxygen, which makes them more basic. The temperature on Titan, because it was so cold, the frogs, they began to form a blubber because they couldn't sunbathe like they like to back on Earth. The water pressure in the ecosystem was really high because of how cold it was. The colder the water, the more dense it is. Because of this, the frogs gained more muscle in their legs within the first 2 to 3 years of coming onto Titan. After the first 2 to 4 generations, though, their legs became one into a tail of some sort. Similar to a mermaid, how they remained with 2 hands but now they have one tail to let them go through the more dense waters.
Well, that's food for thought. So, what are some of the limiting factors that stop the population's growth and what allowed them to grow more?
Good question. Okay, now I'm gonna stop. For the frogs, there were two main limiting factors: food and territory. For food, the water underwater there were bugs and plants the frogs had to go and get because of the lack of insects that they once ate on Earth. For territory, because frogs exhibit territorial behavior, they had to, and they were foreign invaders. They had to fight for new territories, and because they started off limited, they were put at a disadvantage, and it took a while for them to gain a larger region.
That's very interesting. So, were they? Do you think they were successful in their clashes, in their crusade to get more land?
They were very at the beginning, because of their low numbers. They were actually unsuccessful. Frogs, they do combat, like arm to arm combat. It sounds kind of funny, but it was very ineffective against fishes.
I see.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Armin, how is the binomial nomenclature of the frog, and how did it change, and how did it speciate?
So on Earth, the binomial nomenclature of the frog is the Rana temporaria linnaeus, and this is the basic binomial nomenclature for the frogs on Earth. On Titan, the nomenclature changed to Rana truncatus, and this name is stemmed from both frogs and dolphins because of their structural similarity on Titan to dolphins on Earth. Yeah.
That's interesting. How did they evolve? How was the process? Can you give us a step-by-step on how they evolved?
Yeah, so originally their legs, because they were only in water, their legs became more muscular, and every generation there was a closer web between both legs until eventually it was just a single leg, and which we call a tail. And because they have a tail and they also have lungs, similar to dolphins, we related them to dolphins in a sense that they're kind of like a hybrid now.
So when did you determine that they could no further reproduce with the other original species?
Yeah, when coming back to Earth, we brought Rana truncatus with us, the new species. We kept them in a cooling chamber, and we did various tests to see whether they were compatible or not, and the test came back positive, and they were not compatible. And
I see. So it was more of a genetic divide rather than a physical divide, although it was on a different planet.
yeah, it was actually it's switched the other way around. It's more of a structural and appearance divide. They first of all they didn't want to mate. That's the first key. They looked at each other and they were just like no. But genetically, when they tried to, it was just impossible due to their extreme difference.
Incompatibility.
Yeah.
I see. Right. Well, we'll get back. So, Dr. Armin, how do you know that it underwent which did it undergo, Darwinian or Lamarckian evolution? How do you know?
The frogs, they went through Lamarckian evolution, and this is because slowly and gradually, the harder they tried to swim in the colder and more dense waters, their legs increased, their webbing increased in their legs. And this is within their own lifetimes, of course, proving that it is Lamarckian evolution. This gradually changed their legs into a single tail until it was passed on to their offsprings.
So, Dr. Armin, can you explain Lamarckian evolution and give us an example of it to help clarify it?
Yeah, Lamarckian evolution is inheritance of acquired traits, and acquired traits comes from traits that are acquired through one's lifetime because of a want or a heavy desire. And the inheritance part is how its children inherit that trait, so it continues. An example of this would be the theory on how, an example would be, let's say a giraffe wanted to eat from a tree that was really high up. It would keep on stretching his neck day after day until eventually it would stretch out into a longer neck, and it would be able to eat from the tree, and then its children would also have a longer neck. So that's an example of inheritance of
I
acquired
see.
traits.
I see. So, on your research, do you think it was successful? What have you gotten from it? What have you gained? What have you learned?
Yeah, we learned that amphibians such as frogs, when put into environments that have a single type of ecosystem, an aquatic ecosystem, they tend to become more like the animals within that ecosystem, such as how they turned into dolphins, similar to dolphins, how they turn into the rana truncados, and how they become more fish-like.
Do you think that the frogs will be able to become dominant in their new habitat?
Yeah, because they still have arms, while also having a strong tail. I think that they would be dominant because of their combat prowess.
Okay, Mr. Armin, that's all the time we have. Thank you very much for this interview.
My pleasure.
Welcome to Triple K News, your one and only news source for reliable information and relevant information. So, if you guys tuned in yesterday, you know that we had Dr. Armin, and he gave us his interesting research about the aquatic side of his investigation. Today we have Dr. Pathan. We're honored to meet you, Dr. Pathan. Please tell us more about your terrestrial side of your information.
So the animal that I chose was the alligator. The reason was because it's a hybrid. It can live on water and land. And our exhibition was wanting to take the alligator to another planet to see how it would survive if we cut off its water.
So, how did you decide that it would be completely separated from the water?
Well, we realized that the planet that we took it to, Titan, it's extremely cold, and that it would be very difficult for the alligator to survive in very cold waters. So we're seeing if it would be forced to just maybe survive only on land.
I see. So, what were the biotic and abiotic factors in the terrestrial ecosystem before the alligator was introduced, and how were they impacted by the introduction?
Well, in a natural environment, alligators on Earth hunt on the surface of the water. This is obviously because they would like to camouflage and they are fast swimmers. Although on planet Titan, the temperatures are extremely low at about minus 179 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, the water has extremely low vapor pressure, so the atmosphere is nearly free of water vapor. On top of that, planet Titan takes 1% of sunlight, which would contribute to the temperatures of the planet.
How did the alligator itself impact the environment and where it was living?
Well, it would decrease the amount of prey, and also the alligator started to eat more plants and berries, so those will also decline.
I see. So, Mr. Pathan,
Yes, sir.
what is the binomial nomenclature, the scientific name of the alligator before and after it underwent any speciation it will
Well,
undergo?
An alligator is a crocodilian in the genus alligator of the family Alligatoridae.
Okay.
The two living species are an American alligator and Chinese alligator. Now, what we decided to call it after the adaptation is Velocigator.
Velocigator.
Yes.
That's very original.
Yes.
I wonder where I heard it before.
Velociraptor, but it's creative minds.
I see, that's interesting.
Yes.
So, Mr. Pathan,
Yes.
can you describe how one of your organisms, basically the Velocigator,
Yeah.
underwent speciation and what requirements were met for that to happen?
Well, the Velocigator underwent change in their reproductive organs. So they were physically incompatible of reproduction. This was because when their body structure changed and their legs expanded and grew, their coronal area also changed. So that
I
is
see.
the reason.
That's very interesting. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Pathan. This is all
Thank
the time we have today.
It's been an honor.
Been an honor to meet you.